Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's edition of the Sportcat Show. We are honored to have the LIPP Men on sports. I talk about UFL things. Currently, we are on week number 9. So, without further ado, I don't have much to say. Let's bring in the real LIPP Men, Daddy LIPP Men, and Junior LIPP Men. How are you all?
He looks very small.
He does. Well, let's see. We also have someone backstage. We have Charles. So let's see if I can fix all this. Well, no, I don't want to be big. I make you big, not me.
You're the superstar.
Yeah, wow. All right. Well, we'll say hello to everyone out there. Welcome to week 9 of the regular season, episode 12, I believe, of the LIPP Men on the UFL. I heard you there, Glenn, say the LIPP Men on sports trying to rope us into 24/7 ESPN Sports Center stuff. Not yet. Not so fast there, Sportscat. You got to wake up pretty early in the morning to fool me. And by pretty early in the morning, I mean 11:58. So this week, we have a bunch of questions. The quarterback carousel continues. Is it upset week? I know I was upset. There were transactions and injuries. We have the news. We had some, playoff positioning, shuffling. A couple questions answered. Well, one question answered, one not. But, without further ado, first I should say hello to my son. How are you, Jake?
Oh, what a day. Memorial Day weekend. Thank you to everybody who's tuning in on this fine holiday. We will try, as always, to keep it short, but it won't happen. But hopefully we can get some fireworks in afterwards and some good barbecue. But with that said, it was a good weekend of football. We're coming to the end of the season. We already know the playoff matchups, so Week 9 was a little bit of a mess, and I think Week 10 might be a lot of the same.
I think that you might be right. We also should take a moment, because of this Memorial Day, to thank the fallen who fought for our freedom and our safety and still do, and served in any way. They didn't need to fight to be part of the service. There's every kind of job in the military, and every part of it is necessary to make military go forward. And we include in that, our law enforcement agencies and first responders of all sorts. But I think Memorial Day is especially for the fallen of the military, which when I grew up, the Coast Guard was part of the military, and I was part of the Department of Homeland Security. But nevertheless, just respect for the fallen who have fallen in service, and you can pick and choose, in your own hearts and minds. We also have a guest down there who we were going to bring in later, but since he's in there, we're going to acknowledge the black rectangle in below me, and that's Charles Maynard. Charles, how you doing today?
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
All right, and so for the folks who are wondering what Charles is going to do, we're going to introduce him in a couple moments. Well, reintroduce him in a couple moments, and you'll find out why he's here, because he's going to. We think that we're going to add something a little bit different than other UFL podcasts. Not that we don't think we're a little bit different, but I didn't, not that I've heard every single one of them, but I don't think any of them have gone into this sort of micro level. Anyway, let's get into some of the things that happened this past week. So first we go with the week prior ratings, because that's what happens. We probably won't have these ratings until possibly today is the 27th. Usually it's Tuesday, so the 28th. But because of the holiday, things sometimes are delayed by 2 days. So in any event, we're always a week behind either way. So week 8 ratings, Memphis at Michigan, which was on Fox, 673,000. It peaked at 1.058 million in that 7 to 7:15 quarter. Houston at Birmingham was on ESPN2, which is ESPN2 FS1, always bad news for the viewership, and no surprise here, 254,000. Very poor showing. Very bad, despite that being, I think that was in a primetime spot, if memory serves. Your Sunday games were San Antonio versus Arlington. That was on Fox, 545,000. It peaked at 803,000. Why I wrote down the peak, I don't know, I guess, because whoever wrote the article was looking for something to be happy about. St. Louis at DC, which was, the sort of the game of the week, if there is one, that was 1.1 million, and that peaked at 1.4 million. So there's some good news in there. We have our USFL conference championship game all set. Actually, it was all set last week. It's Michigan at Birmingham. No matter what, it was going to be at Birmingham, but now it's definitely absolutely going to be at Birmingham. The XFL was a question. Both St. Louis and San Antonio are in the playoffs. I'm not sure that home field has been determined yet, because I think they've split their season, and they have actually San Antonio has a better record. St. Louis, I believe, has the tiebreaker. So next week when they play each other, if St. Louis wins, they'll have a home game. If San Antonio wins, they'll have the home game, which is very interesting for the St. Louis fans, and it is at San Antonio this week. So a little bit more of news before getting to transactions. All views are up from 2023 at the rate of 27%. This is the same as last time we reported that same stat, which is good, because when I reported that stat, I also added some bad news in that it started at up 54%, then dropped to something like 36%, then 27%. But it seems to have stabilized at up 27%. So that's good. You never, up is up, but you never want to see the trend to go back down. So it looks like it's plateaued. And going into the final week and playoffs, you'd think that it's going to go up. The average view is 806,000. Remember, that includes plenty of simultaneous games, including this weekend. And
too many.
Yeah, absolutely too many. Hopefully not to be repeated. And also games on secondary networks like ESPN2 and FS1. Houston and Michigan, just to build on what we talked about last week, does look like they're not looking for different states. They're looking for different stadiums. I'm not sure. The news is everywhere, all over the place. There's some other news bits, but I think that with that, we can probably, first get if Jake has any impressions upon any of what I just said.
No, I just think we'll talk about it a lot. I think the biggest takeaway is that we have a big game this week, and this big game again has been misscheduled. But that's besides the point. But I think that we're in for a good final week in the playoffs, despite already knowing the matchups. I think that only helps because these teams are already getting a chance to look at them. So I'm just ready for the playoffs, and I think we should recap week 9.
Yeah. Well, before we get into that, we're going to do a little bit more business stuff, because that's why Charles is here. Charles is actually a TV consultant in advertising and numbers and analytics and things like that. I sort of know him from another world, and I've asked him to come on. He was, and we've had to reschedule a couple times. But Charles, thanks very much for being on again, and give the folks your CV and whatever you want to share about your expertise.
Hey guys, thanks for having me. So I've been in the business for about 20 plus years. I'm an ad consultant. I've talked to various networks, CBS, AMC. I've done things with Fox. I've done things with ABC, NBC, and any kind of cable network. I consult with them. I have I represent certain clients, and then we go and place it wherever the primetime networks are.
Nice. So primetime, that does include the UFL for some of their games, and next year apparently part of Fox Friday sports lineup, at least for 10 weeks out of the year. We're not sure about playoffs or championship, though Fox owns half the league, so if they want it, I guess they're getting it. But it looks like from that 8 to 11 o'clock primetime slot Fridays, at least for the 10 weeks during the UFL season, UFL primetime on Fox is part of that plan, and hopefully that also eliminates these simultaneous games. Do you know anything about the numbers with UFL, or based on what I gave to you, if you could plug them into that database that is your head, what does that say about the UFL to you?
From what it says is that UFL and XFL have been going through a lot of changes. There's been new ownership. They're trying to, with Fox, it's going to give them a really big boot up. From what I've gotten from around the networks is that with the UFL, the first season is kind of like that honeymoon grace period. They want to see how things are going within that market. And I think from what I understood is that with Fox, they're really pushing out for the UFL from what they have told me on that Friday time slot. And I know that is some rumors within the networks is that they want to try to do games on Saturday and Sunday as well. So they want to try to do a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday just to fill up that prime time Saturday and Sunday slots. Because with people going, even a lot of times during the summer, people don't watch, but that Saturday and Sunday primetime slot, they want people to be able to tune in even during that summertime where they wouldn't have certain programming. even during that
I think
springtime as well.
I know nobody's raised this at all. I mean, at least not in any formal settings, or at least not in any rooms that made it to public. But is there any thought about making there a Monday night game as well? I mean, it is ABC. They do Monday Night Football, or ESPN, ABC. Is there any thought of making so you have all prime time? I mean, it seems that the games in prime time get over that million mark, and people are sort of trained to watch football on Monday nights.
Well, I haven't heard anything as far as moving the UFL to Monday nights, but that would be a really great thing for them, just to get that Monday night primetime slot. Because with Monday nights, that's when a lot of people actually go and watch TV, believe it or not. Like, I work with analytics and ratings, and Mondays tend to be like that time where everybody would go and watch a sports. If, as you can see with the NFL, they get millions and millions. But with the UFL, if they ever got that Monday night slot, I think that would be great for them. Like, just put them on a network, whether it's Fox, whether it's at CBS, or whether it's ABC. Just put them at that time slot. Like, I know with ESPN they have their obligations, but I think, I haven't heard anything, but I would think it would be greatly beneficial for the UFL to move to a Monday time slot.
Yeah, and I could be wrong about this. I don't know what's on prime time, but I think Fox Monday nights is like these 911 shows and rescue shows, which are, with Peter Krause and Rob Lowe and Jennifer Love Hewitt and things like that, which are all doing very well. But I'm sure they can move them to other nights as well, easily enough.
They could. Yeah, they could.
And Raw is leaving broadcast. It's going to Netflix, which, I mean, I'm sure Netflix hopes a lot of people will still continue to watch it live, but there is a question if it's on Netflix and you can sort of watch it on demand, is there going to be that urgency from WWE fans to watch it live or not? And I'm not sure that Netflix really cares about that or not, as long as they get the views over the course of the week. But the point being is that there's sort of a big Goliath Monday night live show that's no longer going to be exactly a Monday night live show the way that we think about it traditionally now. So there is a potential, there's an opportunity there, maybe an opportunity and a half.
Oh yeah, from what I understand is that Fox wants to fill a lot of stuff with sports. It's a lot of cable these days. A lot of people are just cord cutting on cable. As you can probably tell from your analytics as well, Jeff, is that you can see that cord cutting is becoming a thing. Streaming is going to, in about 5 years, streaming is going to become cable 2.0. Like, everybody's going to be getting a streaming app. So as far as just being able, UFL, yeah, I mean, if they can be on a primetime slot on that Monday, it would be great for them. Even on Fox, like with cable, a lot of people, it's just for I just don't know with cable, but with Fox, it would be great in that Monday time slot. They can move Rescue 911 or whatever that show is over to Tuesday or Wednesday. Like, I don't watch that show personally, so, but with UFL, that's a great opportunity market. Like, there's a lot of people that want to watch football all year long. So having that UFL on that Monday, that would be great.
Yeah, well, you're welcome, Networks, for that great idea. I can't remember the exact numbers, but at some point, it's ironic because they were comparing it to SmackDown, the other WWE show that's on Fox, that a 30-second ad spot for the UFL was costing about $4,700 compared to SmackDown, which was $36,000. Now, SmackDown's always in prime time. The UFL is, maybe less than half the time, but still, I mean, it's a huge gap. And SmackDown does 3 times the numbers, but on broadcast, it's 50, it's half, or maybe a little bit, 55%, and that's like whatever 1/8 of the dollar amount. So there's a lot of opportunity for the UFL to, if it picks up some audience, to also make some more money in ads for the league itself and for the networks. And when you're Fox and you own 50% of it, you're sort of double dipping. You're getting it on both ends.
Of course, yeah. You want to get it on both ends. There's going to be that empty time slot for USA on Monday. It's with that spring and summertime. There's that Goliath, and Monday Night Raw is going to be gone. So there has to be something that's going to be able to fill that. Right? There's certain sports that are going to be on. I mean, NBA is always going to be there. There's always going to be NASCAR. There's always going to be something else, but Fox is going to need to be able to replace that for that prime time Monday night slot. Even if you do Rescue 911, they're still going to get those shows are going to get the same amount of people whether you move it to Tuesdays or Wednesdays. Everything on Fox on network TV is always going to be high, no matter where you moved it. That particular show has moved so many time slots that people will still follow it no matter where that you put it.
Yeah, I do want to acknowledge Jay from the Touchdown crew. He was checking in on us. Thanks, Jay. They were kind enough to have me on a couple times, and we had Charles, his partner in crime, over there on once before. Jake, I'm sure you've got some questions for our Charles, not Charles Richardson.
Well, Charles, thank you for coming on. It's a pleasure to talk with you. I want to expand on this Monday night topic a little bit. I feel like Monday Night Football for the UFL might become a real option with expansion. So how do you think expansion really plays a factor in the TV market?
Expansion is great. If networks, a lot of the times they'll look at the ratings, they'll look at how much that's going to bring in. And then with expansion, I think that moving into a Monday will actually work great for them. Just put more teams. It gives them more visibility. It'll be great for that. It'd be great for the UFLs. I think a lot of UFL fans have been calling for expansion too. I remember when I was watching it with the Seattle Sea Dragons, I was kind of upset that they did not include the Seattle Sea Dragons again. But with expansion, UFL has a real chance to make some really good money. Even with those primetime slots that they are getting, that viewership is actually really higher than some of the reality shows that you've seen in those time slots. So I think that the networks are really impressed right now. They're trying to see what's going to happen with this first season, and then just be able to work from there. If expansion happens, I think Mondays could be a good possibility for them. They just have to line everything up.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no way in the world you can convince me that Andy Cohen is paying less for Teresa Giudice and Kyle Richards on the various Real Housewives shows than I'm sure the salaries of all those ladies. I know they run them reruns forever, and they're sort of evergreen shows. But I can't believe that the cost of those 10 to 18 week television shows aren't more expensive than this league, which with expansion and with more playoffs, and if they had one or two preseason games, they could easily turn it into a 14 or 15 week league, even if there was weeks off for the number one seed team or and whatever. Anyway, smarter people than me can figure it out. But if I can visualize it, they can solidify it. The numbers have been okay, but the league has taken it upon its own shoulders, which is good, because a lot of times when a product isn't doing so great, there's a lot of blame to be passed around. You blame the fans, you blame the networks. The league has sort of said, nah, we did this merger really late. We couldn't we took the slots that we can get. Daryl Johnston, I think yesterday, said that, it's probably our fault that the ratings and the attendance isn't that high, because we really didn't have it. Everything happened so quickly that we didn't really market in the local communities and do all that. So it's nice to see that the executives of the league, because this is a corporate league. It's there's no team owners taking that on Daryl Moose Johnston's broad shoulders. He was the Moose. People will say Moose, rather than any other blame game. Now, you and I both know that signals from TV world and from executives don't necessarily mean anything, but it's not nothing either, right, Charles?
Right. Sometimes what you hear on the media is a lot different than what goes on behind the scenes. I've talked to a lot of people. There's in that network world, there's a lot of people that will say certain things on TV, but then when you talk to them, it'll be a whole lot different. It's one of those type of things where if you follow it for years, I'll give you an example, just like with the wrestling stuff. They may say things out loud to the press or to the media, however that they work, but then behind the scenes, it's a whole lot different. The networks, as long as you're producing something, they like cheap content. That's what a lot of them do and it makes it even with the UFL, it'd be right now they're making pretty good as far as from as far as the ad sales. Like from what I've seen is that it's gone up to the expectation. It's just because that was a merger that was late, and they understood that. Like I've talked to some people that I know, as far as one of the people that is behind the scenes with UFL, and they understood that what you were saying, Jeff. Like they saw that it came in late, so they want to be able to see how that's going, even if it's possibility that they might change from ESPN to go to somewhere else if it's going to get them more viewership.
Yeah, my understanding is that they sold all of their ads, and they were still adding sponsors. Not all are being announced, but like the
Correct.
Department of Defense, the Army sponsorship was solidified, week 2 or week 3 in the league, and there's still more coming. And at the let's just say they do move to more prime time. So we already know they're moving one night to prime time. So let's just put that average from 806, and let's be happy. Let's be optimistic, and let's say it gets moved up to 1 million. With the current ad rate of about, let's just put $4,700 at 1 million.
That sounds about right.
Right. Do you think that ad rate would stay the same, or do you think it would increase, or do you think that that's plenty good enough? I mean, it's not going to get SmackDown numbers of 36,000, but it could go up to, I don't know if my math in my head is right, around 11,000 seems to be, 11,500 seems to be around proportionate. If you're doing 1/3, if you're closer to it being 1/2. I mean, again, I think the SmackDown ad rates were set when SmackDown was doing more like 3 or 4 million. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyway, do you think that there's upward room for that 30-second ad spot that would not break the market, that advertisers would still flock to it?
I think so. It's hard to tell just because with a lot of these things there's a lot of analytics that goes behind it. There's a lot of numbers. They just have to see it. Like it, they would want to give it like the first 3 weeks and see how the numbers go. Put them on a prime time slot. Let them see how everything goes, and then just a lot of it is just hard to determine, just because the UFL is relatively still a young league. So it's with their merger, they're just trying to see how it's going to go right now. Move them to a prime time slot, and then it's going to be, they'll be able to determine it from there. But about 12,000 sounds about right. I would think it would go up quite a bit though.
That's interesting. I'm going to turn it over to Jake and Glenn in a second. I just have one more thing before I lose it, and that is, I have to be honest, I was a little bit worried about season 2 until I heard in the upfronts where Fox actually announced UFL football as part of their Friday night lineup. And as far as I'm concerned, that I know nothing in media and TV is in stone, but that's as close as like the author going up and like chipping the Epic of Gilgamesh into those clay tablets, 5,000 years ago or whatever it was, as it gets in TV. So would you say that when you put in the upfronts like that, it's about as good as it gets?
It's about as good as it gets. Yep. For people who don't know what the upfronts are, that's for advertisers like me. That's like our Christmas. Like all these networks will go and sway people like me who go and represent companies to be able to go and invest and be able to go and advertise. And being on part of the upfronts is a big deal for the UFL. It's gonna let advertisers and investors know that the UFL is important, and it's going to bring more eyes to that product to be part of the upfronts.
Right, fellas, turning it over to you.
Yeah, and so I find that very interesting, and that positivity is really nice to hear, because you always want to see a good football league succeed. And I just want to go back to Jay's comment he just left a second ago. I completely agree with him. I think 4 teams is realistic by 26. I think that's the expectation. I think eventually it'll be 8 to 12 and then a 12 to 16. I think those markets make a lot of logical sense. I think Seattle, Portland, something that can make sense, something in Ohio can make sense. But those 4 cities are very realistic. And so just appreciate you tuning in, Jay. But Charles, for you, I think one thing that we've seen is that the UFL's broadcast is very different. A lot of focus on the gambling partnerships they have, but they also have a lot of little things that they do between sideline reporting with the players that are actually in the game and listening to the coaches and the referees. So from your perspective, what do you think about just all of these opportunities and all these things that are going on? Because they seem amazing, but also at times it can get a little chaotic.
It can be like UFL. They're working with the same model as the XFL. If you remember the way that the XFL was working with the sideline reporters and being able to talk to the players, saying what's on your mind right now. Like I think they've all when the merger happened, I think they adopted the XFL broadcast, which is chaotic, but at the same time, it's really great. Like it gives a lot of opportunities. It shows a different kind of production and different kind of broadcast, and I think that it's really great.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to see something different, but I want to see what Glenn has because it seems like he's cooking up a good question down there.
Well, no, my first thought was, since he works with the ads, we were talking about expansion. Do they give any of the ad agencies, like, let's say, why don't you go talk to a lot of people in Seattle and see what you can get, or DC or Chicago, or do they give you any leadway like that, or are they just
they give us leeway. Like we go with where the TV markets are. Seattle has a high TV market. I think about 13th or 12th in the country for TV markets. New York is number 1, California being number 2, and they give us a lot of leeway. So we try to go and see what, like with the UFL. I know from people that I know is that New York really wants a team. Like they've been begging for a team for a while. Like with that high New York market, I'm sure the UFL is going to go with New York and Philly. And Orlando. Even seeing Jay's question, like those are some pretty high market teams. Like people in Florida love football. Like in New York, they've been dying for football for a while. So as far as the leeway, yeah, they give us a lot of leeway. We go and be able to talk to people and see what's up.
It's also interesting because it's like a national product in localized areas, but it's not. It's like neither. It's not like a really recognized league. I'm not sure that everyone even knows what the UFL is. I think some people still say the XFL. They still say the USFL. I think some say what. So, but it's not really embedded into its local markets either. And I mean, listen, I'm going to pretend to be Jake for a second and look at the positive, because there's plenty of places to go up on both those things. All you have to do is advertise and push that it exists. And I've definitely seen a lot more of it on other Fox products, definitely cross promotions with the commercials and things like that. I don't watch a lot of broadcast TV. Sorry, world, it's just the way it is. But some of the, some prestige TV is on FX, and I think it was Fox now, but I think one of the other partners, I think it's now Disney, and they're ESPN and ABC, and there's a lot of UFL ads on there. And so I think they're pushing awareness of it. At the same time, I hope what Daryl Johnston said is correct, that they're going to start trying to harvest those local markets. And, we've had ideas on the show about it. I'm sure they've got smart teams. Like, Charles, where does someone like you come in? Are you a broadcast media buyer? Are you an actual ad agency? Do you represent advertisers? I mean, what is your role in the game, and who are the other players?
It's more of an ad agency. I'm a consultant, so I'm an independent contractor. So I have certain clients that I represent. I go consult with, like, Coors Light. I have Doritos. I have Capital One. I have clients who I go out and say that, oh, we're going to go to local markets, like with the UFL. I know from the people that I've talked to over at the local news stations, and some of the people around were very upset when the Seattle Sea Dragons weren't picked. Like it was a big market. Like even with soccer, they were dying to have some spring football there, like Major League Rugby. You wouldn't think that something like that would be able to draw, but in certain markets, like even when I go out there and do that, I let them know that this is going to be something that they're going to be entertained by. It's going to get them more eyes, and I think with UFL, it's something out there. As far as the other players, there's other ad agencies and other consultants do different things, but I just know from my circumstance, I go to a lot of the local markets. Sometimes I go to New York City. Sometimes I go to Texas. Sometimes I go to California. I go to places where or they'll even want UFL. Like I know from San Bernardino, they were talking about it at one time, but that's something that nobody's told you. But San Bernardino in California, just outside of LA, they wanted the UFL.
Nice. Well, maybe they should get the Real Housewives of Orange County, the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills to have a crossover event.
Can you imagine that one?
Yeah, I just did. So clearly, I can imagine it. Yeah, absolutely. We have another question from Jay, and I still don't know the correct way to pronounce his last name. I've never actually asked him, but I'm going to go with La Casa Nostra to make it exciting, like Antonio Banderas. What's he say there? I would like to see a real push with street teams in these markets over this 9-month offseason. We would too. I think they need boots on the ground. Agree. Till they have individual owners. Yeah, we won't get into that in a second. Is there any talk about year-round street teams and maybe social media promotional teams being higher for the offseason? Charles, I think you know what street teams are, but just for anyone in the audience who doesn't, those are literally what you think they're people who go to put flyers on windshields. They go out to public events, farmers markets, flea markets, community events, community parties, and they give out lanyards and drink cozies and T-shirts and whatever, and carnivals and state fairs, and they say, hey, we're from the UFL, we've got a team here, and just within 40 minutes of here, and tickets are $10, and there are family packages where you can get 4 tickets for $28 and enjoy a major league game for a minor league price, blah blah blah. And basically they're cheerleading teams, sometimes including cheerleaders themselves.
That would be correct.
Yeah,
you got it.
So do you see that kind of push? And two parts. Do you hear anything about there being private ownership? And if so, do you think the owners will have some requirements put upon them to be a franchise owner, to market in their teams, to spread the word?
Well, part one, yeah, there's a lot of street teams. There's a lot of, and I'm sure that they'll adopt more promotional teams here in upcoming. I don't have a definitive date as far as when that's going to happen. And as far as the individual ownerships, I don't know as far as what the UFL's rules are, but I have heard of individual ownerships happening. I just know with the UFL being a relatively young league, I don't know what their ownership requirements would be, but if there's somebody out there that's going to go and make a push for it, then I'll let you guys know as far as what I know.
Cool. All right, guys, you guys have any questions for Charles or any observations?
I just want to remind everybody they can also call in at 1-888-88-YERGZ. That's 1-888-88-YERGZ on your phone pad, and you all will talk to them live on the air. So there is that option as well.
Charles, do you think private ownership would make any difference, really? I mean, people love the owner when they buy the team. They generally hate the owner at all points in between, and then they love the new owner when they buy it until they learn to. I mean, listen, I've been in Baltimore long enough to know that people hated the ownership group and then loved Peter Angelos until they learned to hate Peter Angelos, and then they loved the new ownership group, and now they love Peter Angelos again because he passed away. But you just can't say the name Irsay in this town without somebody spitting. It's like a Romani curse. Do you think that private ownership makes a bit of difference beyond the efforts that private ownership might put into the local community? Or do you think that we're sort of overthinking that's too micro, that the issues are really more macro?
For me, I just don't think it would make much of a difference as far as the private ownership. I think relatively it would stay the same just on that end. It just depends on how much devotion that private ownership is going to have. If they want to invest it to the team, or if they care about the community around there, it doesn't. From what I've seen, it just with the UFL, it's not really going to make a difference. I just don't know. I don't want to tell you any wrong information on that end. From what I've seen, it's not really going to make a difference.
Jake, you can bring the dog on the camera. I'm sure it's a very attractive animal.
He's doing his thing. We went to the dog beach today, so he's a little weird today.
I've heard valuations where saying the teams are worth $30 to $40 million a year. I mean, I understand that these are made up numbers. It's like, Twitter was worth $44 billion because Elon Musk offered to pay $44 billion. They said, we accept. He said, no, I don't want to. And they went to court and they said, you accept. And the court said, you accepted. And, and now it's, worth 11 billion, but probably isn't worth more than the 4 or 5 that it was before. If even that. I mean, I don't understand the value of data, but there's other companies where Truth Social was valued at 6 or 7 billion, and now it's stock, it's worth a fraction of that. I mean, do you think these teams are actually worth 30 or 40 million dollars, or is it just it's sort of made up for now that they decide that's the reasonable price? But you could make a killing if this league is still here in 4 or 5 years. You're going to make a killing on that $40 million investment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of it's smoke and mirrors. Anything that how private ownership works. Like they're going to display certain numbers. Oh, we're valued. They overinflate things a lot. Like they'll say that they're worth certain values, but then they're not. It's just the 4 or 5 years they see it as if they see it as a killing, they'll go and invest in it. But just what you hear in the media as far as what the worth is not really going to be what they display. Never believe anything as far as what they'll. All these owners just overinflate everything. Of course, a business owner will want to overinflate everything and want to make sure that things aren't going to go out that's bad in the public. Like, I don't want people to know that I'm really worth $15. I want them to know that I'm worth $30 instead of $15.
It's an interesting conundrum if you are a group or someone who wants to buy a team, because of course you want to get a deal. You want to be the first one in, but you also want to be cognizant that you're setting the market. I mean, you want to return on your investment immediately. So if if you made the deal for 28 million, you've just diminished the value of your theoretical investment. So listen, I don't have $40 million to spare, so I don't really know how someone like that thinks. If they're like, they say 40 million, let's go in for 40 million. And then when I sell it, it's going to be 45 million. Or if they go, I'm going to be the first. I want to come in at, 27 million and then make the next guy pay, 31 million and make the next guy after them pay 34 million and, edge it up that way. Like you're the first one to buy in a new development and you just want the property values to go up. Or if you're dealing with other people as sophisticated as you are and you're like, he paid 27 million, I'm paying 27 million too. I mean, is that something that you would have any insight into, or is that just your guess is no better than mine?
Well, that's my guess, but there's always going to be that one owner that's always going to overpay or overinflate it, and it messes it up with a lot of the teams like that. Even with player contracts in all sports, like there's always that one owner that overpays for everything, and then it's going to overinflate it on purpose, but they really can't go and afford it. But as far as just with that, it's like, yeah, I mean, it's my guess is as good as yours. Just as far as that, I don't have like real insight on as far as certain owners in the UFL, but it's just on my guess anyway. In about 4 to 5 years, if the UFL is still around, just on that end, it's gonna be worth a lot. Like people have been dying for spring football. People have been dying for even summer football sometimes. But as far as I could tell, and this is just my guess, is that a lot of the owners they'll overinflate it and they'll say, oh well, we'll see what happens. But it's a private company. They're not going to display their books. They're not going to do anything. They're always going to go and overinflate.
Right. And I imagine they'll do the same kind of franchise, collective agreement, the NFL model, where it's sort of a cooperative, and the commissioner works for the owners or something like that. Or maybe they'll try it. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's just speculation. But Charles, I never intended to keep you 35 minutes, but I think that we got a lot of great insight out of you and a lot of inside information. I'm not sure how many UFL podcasts are going into this at all, and I think all the fans should be interested in the dollars and cents because it's a business at the end of the day. And last I checked, Fox, which owns 50% of it, wasn't a socialist company. And last I checked, Redbird Investments wasn't in there for bad investments. And The Rock is just sort of a famous face on the front. So they're all in it for profit. So, fans should be interested to see what the plan is to make a profit, and if there seems to be a road and a path that way, and it seems like there could be. If even someone like myself can see it, and you can sort of confirm it with your inside information, I'd say that's good news for the league.
Oh yeah. UFL fans, just get ready. Like it could take off. You just never know. Expansion would be great. You could possibly see the 12 to 16 teams if it takes off like the UFL wants it to. Like more owners will invest. They'll see how much they'll see that the fan. It's all about fan demand. Like the more that the fans want it, they'll get teams in there.
Well, ESPN, if you want more private journalism like this hard-hitting journalism, you're going to have to come to us with a good offer. That's all I got to say. All right, Charles, thank you so much for joining us and giving us some of your time in what is the late afternoon, and you're probably ready to take your afternoon nap like I do.
All right, Jeff. All right, guys. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you for joining us.
All right.
Charles,
all right.
Thank you for coming
Have
on.
a great one.
You too. All right. Interesting conversation there. I mean, I thought that was really insightful, and I hope the audience and especially my co-host and our producer got something out of that as well. All right. Well, let's go into a little bit about the people are dying for football, and unfortunately, some sort of counter information, which would be the attendance for Week 9 at Arlington. Arlington again continues to be struggle, 8,545. They're on their 1-game win streak, but it's a big team in St. Louis. It's not as easy to travel to Arlington as it was to Birmingham. Birmingham at San Antonio. San Antonio is one of the better performing towns, 11,839. One of the better teams too. DC at Memphis. Memphis is continuously underperforming, except for the financial support of what will probably be that franchise's owner, if there is a private ownership, in Fred Smith of FedEx fame, was 6,380. That's either a 3 or a 7. I don't think it really matters whether those extra 4 people were there or not for these purposes. And Michigan at Houston, another team, fourth largest city in the United States, 6,527. So not last out of 4, but pretty close. And 4 versus Memphis, which is like the 52nd size city in the nation. Houston, you continue to have a problem. All right. So attendance. Any thoughts on attendance, fellas?
I think since we know the playoff matchups, I think the fans, both in the stadiums and on their couches, are waiting for the playoffs. I think that we'll see a lot of the same numbers next week. I think they're a little disappointing, but as we spoke just a second ago with Charles, I think overall everything's looking positive. So I think despite this being they're pretty hard numbers to hear, I don't think it's an alarm to set off.
Okay. I also heard from my one of my acquaintances in Texas that it got up to about 110 degrees there. So there's a little disincentive to be outside that, even if you're a Texan. And it is Memorial Day weekend. So it's a 3-day weekend, which, a lot of people, go away, they travel. So, there's, I guess that cuts both ways. But anyway, we don't need to harp on that. Some other news, the championship trophy was revealed. Have you guys had a chance to see that trophy?
I have not seen it.
Yes.
I think it's really nice. I mean, it's sort of almost like a 3-dimensional V with sort of like a cleft through the middle, almost like almost like a tuxedo vest, but it's not closed in the middle. It's sort of triangular, the upside down triangle.
Is there a way we can get a picture on the screen, Glenn?
Oh, maybe. A little like the Lombardi trophy.
They kind of just hollowed out the NCAA one, in my opinion. But
yeah, that's probably a pretty good description. Also, Arlington got their championship rings from last year before the game, giving them a little bit more incentive. Tickets are for sale for the playoffs, and I think even preseason for packages next year, season ticket packages are on sale as well. There is a looming labor issue. Some of the head coaches have been complaining about their pay and saying that they were only contracted through 24, which I think the head coach gets a budget. So it's not just their pay, it's the pay of all of the coaches. So Wade Phillips is probably making more than the other coaches, but because he has less less assistant coaches. I'm just guessing. I don't have enough inside information, but I think they were given, and listen, hasn't hurt the Brahmas any, might have helped them. But because of that news coming out, it turned out that most of the players' contracts are also up in 24. And so some of the insiders are saying that they'll probably just do letters of intent as opposed to long-term contracts, almost like year to year. I don't know what to make of that. I mean, I guess it's good that you just can't have releases and I guess you can. In all sports contracts, you can always release people. So probably doesn't make a difference. It'd be great if they had 6-year contracts, but everyone wants salary. Yeah,
I think it makes sense. You're in this league to get up to the major leagues per se. I mean, if you're in AAA and you're stuck in AAA, you want to move to a new team where you have an opportunity. So I think going year to year allows the players the flexibility, it allows the league some flexibility, and it allows for them to build that relationship with the NFL or even the CFL for being a pipeline of talent.
Do you think the CFL is a step up or is it lateral?
I think it's lateral. I think the CFL has a lot of good things going on. I think they have that ESPN partnership, so they're on ESPN Plus a lot, and that allows them to reach the American market. I think what they're doing, they've got the Canadian market. There is no the Canadian football demand is there. There is no American team, so they're very Canadian focused, and I think this is the equivalent in the States. I think because of the relationship with Fox, it kind of puts the players equally as exposed, and I think once the UFL is more of a household name, that's when the UFL would probably then be above the CFL just because it's in America. I actually personally think the quality of CFL football right now might be a little bit higher. Maybe it's just because the players have been together more, but I think that's just he said, she said.
I think the pay is also higher. They're privately owned. I remember that from when the before Baltimore had the current football team, which for a while had no name, is now the Ravens, and in between the Colts, we had the Baltimore. We thought it was going to be the Colts. The football Colts said no, and I said, the Stallions, and then the football said no, and then it was going to be the CFLers. And then the owner, who everybody loved at first, it turned out he was like the Great Gatsby and had no money, and he was run out of town, and everyone hated him. And I think the team moved back to Toronto or wherever they came from. But I do think that the players do make more money. I'm not sure. Yep, there you go. So yeah,
I actually kind of think it's cool. It's got a little like Olympus kind of vibe.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's a pretty trophy. I mean, and the championship rings, it's like they're not skimping out on some of the sort of the frills. I mean, Definitely. It looks like a championship trophy. The rings that Arlington got look like championship rings. I mean, it's not like junky stuff here. These are things of value. So yeah,
and I like the split of it, showing 2 different conferences, and like Jay said in the comments, like. I think it would be nice for them to have the XFL and the USFL trophy similarly to the NFL, but I do think that championship trophy kind of sums it up because it has both halves of the league, and champions is right in the middle. So I actually think that's a pretty cool looking trophy.
I think so too. I don't know about you need conference champions. So there's only 4 teams, in each conference.
But it would be nice. It's something to play for the players. It's just a motivator.
When there's expansion, well, right now it's frills. It's like a welterweight belt when you already have a lightweight. Anyway, some other transactions. Chase Garbers was activated, though he was listed as a QB2. Though, as we found out, that's not exactly what happened. And John Lovett, the running back for San Antonio, was scratched. Apparently, it was a planned rest week for him, and so there was probably some more of that. But I don't think I want to go through too many of the transactions. We'll talk about some of the major things as the games go forward. So the first game was St. Louis at Arlington. Wilkins Jr. was the starting quarterback for St. Louis. A.J. McCarron, up to today, Monday the 27th, was still listed as day-to-day. Luis Perez did start. There was some question as to whether he would start or sit down. We had some questions here. I think we both advocated. Yeah, pretty ring. We both advocated that maybe they should start the rookie and see what he can do. But
and Lindsey Scott didn't even play. They played Holton Ahlers, Houston Ahlers. Yeah. They played him a little bit, and I'm not sure if Lindsey Scott was hurt or something. But that was just very interesting to me. Something that I should have looked into. But
I don't know. All I can tell is that Arlington came to play. They did a trick play early on where they sort of did a lateral, and then I think as a receiver threw a pass, a 40-yard pass to Canella. The 2-point conversion was made. Arlington had a field goal as well. Sailors for St. Louis continued to have a solid play. He had a touchdown catch. Extra point was missed, of course, but Wilkins Jr. also had a rush touchdown. They missed the extra point there. Right before the end of the half, there was Isaiah Winstead caught a touchdown pass, and there was a reverse to also Isaiah Winstead, who ran all the way around for the 2-point conversion. Probably the most difficult 2-point conversion I've ever seen someone work for. He ran around 900 yards for it. But at the end of the first half, it was 19-15 Arlington. St. Louis, the playing for playoff positioning, and some say the best team in the league. Didn't look like it. But as we opened the second half, we had Wilkins Jr. He had his second rushing TD. St. Louis missed all 3 of its extra points at this point in time. Seth Green, because I just like saying Seth Green, had a touchdown catch for Arlington. He also successfully caught the extra point. There was another field goal on Arlington's part. There were 2 interceptions thrown by St. Louis to Arlington, and one was a pick 6, which that wasn't great. And then something I'd never seen before later on in the game. So Arlington had a field goal, but after the pick 6, that was St. Louis's 6 points, they turned the ball over on their 1-point extra conversion and threw an interception, and the guy ran it from the Arlington touchdown zone all the way 100 yards to the St. Louis touchdown zone, and all of that counted for 1 point. So a turnover on an extra point conversion can be turned into the same amount of points they're going for, which is something I didn't know before. I didn't know that anyone mentioned it before, but we saw a pick 6 and a pick 1 back-to-back plays. Did I even come close to doing that justice?
I mean, I will say we have seen a couple potential opportunities. And what's going on Uncommon Soul? We saw you in there a little bit earlier than the show. It's nice to see you again, as always. I feel like it was maybe 2 weeks ago where we saw a near return back, and the guy got tripped up. So I think it's been threatened, but we haven't actually seen one of those yet. And I think that's just a intriguing twist. I feel bad because all that work for 1 point, it seems a little underwhelming, but I mean, every point matters at the end of the day. So I think it adds an extra element to the game, and it's very surprising. And it was nice to see their defense getting a little active.
Absolutely. I'm going to pay more attention from now on to extra point conversions, because even though I hate that they miss most of them, well, now if they miss them in particular ways, it could lead to points for the other team. So I did not know that. This is something I learned in week 9. Wilkins threw a third. I'm sorry, go.
I said you learn something new every day.
Indeedy. So Wilkins threw a third interception, but this was junk time. He was just throwing the ball up to try and make something happen. So the game ended with Arlington winning its second game in a row. So no longer in the conversation as the worst team in the league. The ending score was 36-22. I'm pretty sure that the over hit on that one. So you now have St. Louis falling to 6-3, Arlington at 2-7, and the next game of the day was Birmingham, undefeated at 8-0, going against San Antonio, strong everywhere at 6-2. Adrian Martinez did get the start. Quinton Dormandy got the start instead of Garvers, even though he was active. This game was disappointing, especially if you're a Birmingham fan. I don't want to get too much in the game. We'll go over who some of the stars were, but 2 weeks ago, Birmingham beat St. Louis in what was, proclaimed as the game of the year, and maybe it was, but we saw some chinks in Birmingham's armor. And St. Louis since hasn't, they've lost 2 out of the last 3, of course, one being the game we just talked about. Birmingham last week squeaked out a win against a way inferior team, so we thought, but they got the win. But we felt like we were starting to make more excuses for Birmingham. Maybe they were taking it easier. Maybe they were resting him. Hello, Beyond the Box. What box are you beyond? I'm not sure if I should have asked that question in hindsight. Well, live TV.
What you ask.
Right.
It already happened.
So, spoiler.
Actually, I'll be honest. She is the host of another show, so she comes in here and follows us regularly. So,
all right. Well, what's that show
it's
about?
Brenda.
We should plug, shows that are on the network.
Absolutely.
Well, her description of mine are probably a little bit different, but she says it's Beyond the Minds box. I say it's to the point where you have to put the tinfoil hat on. So, but that's just me.
Okay, well, there you go. Selling the dream, Glenn. Selling the dream. All right.
That's what I do.
We like that. We like that you're thinking out of the box. What else is YouTube for? Come on. All right. So anyway, we have the start. So we have Justin Smith had a he caught a touchdown pass. They mixed the extra point 3 times because there were 2 penalties. And so Birmingham gave San Antonio every opportunity to get this extra point, but they missed it all 3 times. So 3 strikes and you're out. Garbers comes in. He gets a little bit of time, but he really didn't seem to be very comfortable there. At this point, Martinez marches Birmingham down. Again, field goal. That's been sort of, all teams sort of suffer from not scoring and getting field goals when they should get touchdowns. But they did get a touchdown pass to Jay Sternberger, who quietly had a pretty impressive game. The extra point was missed. Ellison, a big running back for San Antonio, doesn't get a lot of play because he's behind Lovett and McFarland. He had a touchdown rush. The extra point was missed. There was also a missed field goal. San Antonio made a super challenge, and Wade Phillips loses that super challenge. But San Antonio caught a break on a non-fumble being called incomplete. Commentary and everyone else was saying it was the right call. I don't know. I watched. It looked like the guy caught it to me and fumbled. It looks like he made what they call a football move. Probably not enough to overturn on review. I would agree with that, but maybe the wrong ruling on the field, if you know what I mean. Martinez threw an interception when there was 22 seconds left. They were near the goal. Ellison had a second rush touchdown. Again, the extra point was missed. This game ended 18-9, and I'm rushing through it because it was not a pretty game. I mean, San Antonio won at home, but they didn't score a lot of points. Their defense was tenacious. But Martinez didn't look so good. Birmingham didn't look so good. Undefeated no more. 8-1 to 7-2. Jake, what are your thoughts about this game?
I mean, I think this game was very simple. It was a letdown for Birmingham. And San Antonio exposed them somewhere where we haven't seen them exposed just yet. What San Antonio did incredibly was they ran the ball zone. They were doing some zone runs outside, running in between the guard and the tackle, outside the tackle. McFarland had a great game. And they were able to find the chink in the armor, something that we haven't seen just yet. And they're a team that likes to pass, and they like to go for those big plays, but they kind of went to an old school game plan, and it worked. They did something a little unexpected. They changed it up, and they made it happen. And I think when you look at their game, it was a good game for them finally.
Can we talk a little bit about the other side of things? Like, are you concerned about Birmingham? They've been playing their worst football at the end of the season.
I think that, yes, obviously it's concerning. Obviously you want that momentum to carry you into the playoffs. I think they know exactly where they are in the playoffs. So I think that there is, I don't want to say less of a priority, but maybe less of a motivation. Whereas you have the Brahmas who are playing for positioning, and they also have Wade Phillips, who master motivator, and that defense is great as always. But I think when you look at them, they've had the same problem all years. They have an inconsistent running game. And for them, they struggle to run the ball this week. And so in the playoffs, I think they're going to know that. I think that they're going to focus on utilizing the run and imposing it early in the games to make sure that they can operate the way that they want to. But I do feel like, and I'm looking at the stats here, Adrian Martinez had 5 carries for 56 yards as their leading rusher, but Ricky Person Jr. touched the ball the most. He had 7 carries for -1 yards, and CJ Maribel only had 2 carries. So I think that that's a concern. I think their defense is always going to be good. They're always going to be in every game. So they just need to figure that one deficiency out.
Yeah, there's a guy named Speaks on the defense who's just fantastic.
And he had 3 sacks this week, and if he is not going to be the defensive player of the year, he's got to be number 2. I think there's a very clear top 2 going into the end of the season.
Yeah, I think he ended. Yeah, he's on Michigan, but I think the standout for San Antonio is Tavion Beckett, right? Is that his name?
Yep.
Tavion.
Yep.
And Birmingham, we mentioned last week how only one of their starting linebackers from the start of the season is still playing today. So maybe they're getting some people healthy. I honestly don't know, but I'm a little bit concerned about Birmingham. But you think maybe they're just taking their foot off the gas rather than overconfident, or you think it's a little bit of both?
I mean, I think it's a little bit of both, but I also think in this specific matchup, it's a little bit simpler. I mean, we saw one team who exposed run defense deficiencies and ran the ball well, and then another team that couldn't run the ball, and they were just one-dimensional. And so I think this game might have been a lack of motivation leading to a poor game plan. And I think when you go into the playoffs and the games matter, I think that lack of motivation is gone. So I'm not that concerned.
Well, going into my Beyond the Box, first of all, Beyond the Box, I think that you might appreciate my podcast, Garden of Doom. There could be some synergies there. But in my Beyond the Box tinfoil hat, do you think that maybe Skip Holtz realized it wasn't working and said, this isn't going to work, but you know what? I don't want my team to get complacent. I want them to have that one loss. I want them to get this loss this week, not next week, and not going into the playoffs. Let them not feel like that they're not Superman. There is kryptonite out there, and get their motivation back. Do you think that's coach think, or do you think that a coach wants to win every single game?
I think you watch a lot of conspiracy theories.
There you go. So,
I think that sounds more like the world is flat than realism. I think he wanted to win that game.
Wait, Glenn, isn't the world flat?
No, the world is not flat. Sorry.
Mine is.
I know.
Explain to me how carpet stays down then. Sheesh. I mean, look at that.
Water stays in the ocean.
You get carpet in squares, right? I rest my case. All right.
Grid squares. Yes.
Grid squares, exactly right. Squares, nonetheless. Squares are flat. The end. All right. So DC at Memphis. We're moving on to Sunday now. Tiamo.
Game of the week, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. Game of the week.
We said 0-0.
That was mine.
This is my betrayal of the week, because I finally decided to believe in Memphis and not give DC any credit. And both of them, I got both of my eyes spit in at the same time, and two stooges poked my eyes, and the other one bopped me on the top of my head. Uncommon Soul says it's round but flat.
Absolutely
round
correct.
And flat, like a plate. Exactly, I agree.
Pizza.
With a firmament over it, like a snow globe. I got it. And like a little bit underneath, with a nice flat thing for the underworld, and a little flat base for the, to sit on the turtle that's flying around the universe. All right. So Jordan Timo gets the start. We weren't sure about that. Troy Williams got the start from Memphis. We weren't sure about that. So early on, Tamo and DC, nothing much is happening. They have a 4th and 2. They decide to go for it. You can hear Barlow going, no, we're going for it. No, we're going for it. No, we're going for it. Like he's arguing with the team over it. And your favorite guy, Jake Little Roland catches a touchdown catch, and he goes for I don't know. It felt like it was 45 yards that he ran, but he felt like he was running at a 4.3 40 or something. He's a little speedy little guy there.
Yeah, Chris Rowland probably had his best game of the season, and they're finding really good ways to use him.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. Missed the extra point, but later on, QT. So it's a Kiki QT. There's a Kiki Chisholm and another team had a touchdown catch. And this time the 2-point conversion was good. So we have 14-0 DC over that. There was a deflection thrown by Tiamo. Memphis turned it into interception, and Tiamo threw a second interception. But still, despite all of that sort of offensive ineptitude by DC, Memphis was that much more inept. They got 2 turnovers and still converted that into no points. that brought in Josh Love, who I wanted to start the game late into the second quarter. I'm like, all right, Memphis, you're not going to let me go. We're feeling that Elvis theory, that spirit of Elvis, that Graceland, that Johnny Cash. We got that fire. Darius Victor, who I mentioned last week, is somebody who was on a decent team with a decent line, could get something done. He gets a rush TD. You get the extra point converted. It's 14-7. Things are feeling good. And then Ellis, the tight end for Washington, catches another touchdown pass. I think it's their second of the year. Extra point is good. It's 21-7. Then Tiamo adds a rush TD. There's a 2-point extra point conversion as well. At this point, it's something like I don't even understand the score at this point. It's like 29-7 or 30-7. At this point, my TV mercifully switches to the Houston, Michigan game. So I never got
of the Michigan game. I didn't hear anything about these scheduling issues, but I mean, they can't fill Ford Field, so I don't think the home field advantages matter that much. But yeah. I do think that they will keep their home colors if they so please, and I do think that they'll be treated as the home team when it comes to the coin toss and stuff. I guess not the coin toss, but the coin toss events. But right. With that said, I do think that they would be respected and treated as the home team. But I haven't heard about that issue, and like I said, I'm not really sure if it makes too big of a difference.
Yeah, I mean, they'll be treated as the home team, but it's an artificial neutral field, but it would be a neutral. By the way, with Michigan, one of the places they were talking about moving them to was actually Ann Arbor, which I'm hearing a lot of complaints from the Detroit audience and fans of Michigan. Well, maybe you should go to the games. I don't know what to say. I mean, it's spring in Michigan. I mean, the weather there is perfectly pleasant. It's
and the team's pretty good. It's fun to watch.
Yeah, they're a good team. So anyway, Josh Love rather, but even Jordan Love, no one named Love, Courtney Love couldn't have helped this team. Nothing brought this team back. I don't even know what the final score was. I think it ended up like 36-22 or so. I don't know, but
36-21 DC Defenders win, and we were all a little surprised by that one, even though we should have known better.
Right. So DC goes to what seems to be at this point a respectable 4-5, because there is such a difference between the have and have-nots. They're about the only mediocre team, I suppose. Memphis falls to 1-8 and reclaims its place in my heart and probably in reality as the worst professional football team in the UFL and probably the world. All right. Houston versus Michigan. Nolan Henderson is the starting quarterback for Houston. Etling is the starting quarterback for Michigan, but that doesn't last very long because they put Perkins in, which is great because I really like Perkins. I like Lewerke too. I like both of them better than Etling. But Perkins got the start. The Michigan defense is really the story of this game. They had, I think you mentioned earlier, they had 4 sacks. 3 of them was by Tavion Speaks. There were 9 knockdowns. They had at least 1 fumble recovery. They had a sort of a last-second interception as well. Played a pretty solid game. Not sexy, but some of that. Etling, there was a rushed TD early in the game. We know Wes Hills wasn't in the game. Who scored that rushed TD?
Oh, you're asking me?
Yeah. The name escapes me.
I can cheat. Oh, it was the man, Mark Thompson.
Right, Mark Thompson. There you go.
Back. He had a decent game too.
Yeah, he had a good game. They were talking to him on the sidelines like it's like riding a bicycle. So yeah, he got a rush touchdown. We haven't seen much from him this year, so that's actually good. Guy named Quinn, who I'm going to call Peter Quinn. I'm not sure if that's his real name or not.
That's a guy from Homeland.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, and that's Trey Quinn, who caught his first touchdown of the season this year.
Right. And this is where Perkins takes over at quarterback. It was a sort of latish in the second, early in the second half. I think after 4 minutes into the second half. On Houston's side, there were 2 touchdown passes to Hall, so good on that. Perkins did get a touchdown rush there in the second half. The extra point was good. There was a big run by Perkins at some point, and then he had a second rushing touchdown, and the extra point was good again. So Perkins doing a lot with his legs, getting into the end zone, and he just, yeah. I'm not going to say he's Adrian Martinez, but first of all, he's bigger than Adrian Martinez, at least bulk wise, probably not height wise. But he brings a dimension to Michigan that sort of they didn't have before. And I don't know. I feel like they're a very full team. That they're missing a little bit on the outside, but with 3 running backs and Perkins at quarterback, I sort of feel like that. Well, how can you be a sleeper at 7-2? But they feel like they've been slip sliding and sneaking into this league sort of higher echelon royalty.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's because it was the case of playing to their opponents. They played a lot of close games, but they're able to win close games, and those are the types of teams that you want to see in the playoffs. And I'd like to just talk about Bryce Perkins for a second here, because I think you bring up a good point where he's very quick and he brings a totally different dimension to the game for them. He had 2 rushing touchdowns, I believe. I think he was their leading rusher, and they used him a lot. Whether it was by design or not. And I think one thing that you mentioned is his type of speed. I mean, he's more of that straight line speed, dynamic ability. Well, not like Lamar Jackson, nobody's like Lamar Jackson, but in the style of a Lamar Jackson. Whereas a guy like Manny Wilkins, who also had a great game statistically running the ball, he's not as fast and elusive and slippery. He might have more of and he's definitely not the thrower of Patrick Mahomes, but his running ability is a lot more like Patrick Mahomes, where he's a bigger guy and he can get down the field and he can run and it's efficient, but it's not going to wow you. So I think you see a lot of these backup quarterbacks coming in and showing that element of speed. And that's something for Michigan that I think helps. As you mentioned, they've got a whole stable of running backs. And when you look at it, Nate McCrary was the guy that I was really hoping to see in this league. And we haven't really seen him much until the last few weeks. And he had a great game this week. And Matthew Colburn's the guy that we've been talking about as one of the best running backs in the league for a while now. So I agree with you. I think Michigan's going to be in every single game that they play. Trey Quinn's been Mr. Reliable, and he finally got that first touchdown. And I think the biggest takeaway for them in this entire game is COC Mariner. He had 8 catches for 95 yards, and he hit a couple of really big plays. And I think they're starting to really find their own.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I remember early on, I was surprised by how professional Michigan seems and how unflappable they seem to be, how Coach Nolan seems to coach with confidence and the team seems to play with confidence. And you're right, they play their opponents. Like, I don't know that they've blown anyone out. This game was 26-22 at the end. It's, the way I blew through it, you'd think that Michigan won, 57-3. But it wasn't as close as 26-20. It never felt like Michigan wasn't going to win this game, especially by the second half. At least I didn't feel like it.
But you know what? If I can interject real quick, I think that's credit that final score to Houston. I think when you look at, you were talking about the worst team in professional football. I think that kind of just shows that Houston is just a little bit ahead of Memphis at this point in time. I think they have their own quarterback problems and they have their own issues. But at one point, it just seemed like they were feeding the ball to Justin Hall. And he was making some really big plays for them. And we've been calling for Nolan Henderson to get some playing time. And he didn't look the best throwing the ball. He didn't have as many opportunities. They blitzed him a lot, which kind of threw him off. And there was just a couple other things. I think he's a better thrower of the football than what he showed this past week. But he ran the ball a lot for them. And that's what kept them at least – chugging along and keeping close and getting first downs. And he did a little bit of the dirty work that, they weren't getting from their running backs. And, we said that Mark Thompson played well, and he did. He had 11 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown, but, they don't – TJ Pleasure hasn't been used as a number 2 guy since Mark Thompson. I don't know if they're just not committed to the run, or maybe because they have this aspect of the quarterback that they kind of want to mix in different ways, but they need to get their ground game more physical, I think, because they have a guy like Nolan Henderson who brings that speed at the quarterback, and you have Mark Thompson who can get you the touchdown on the goal line. So let's find a way to merge this all together. But credit to Houston for keeping it close, and Michigan really is dangerous. I apologize for that tangent and cutting you off, but I like a lot of what you said.
I mean, you didn't cut me off. First of all, you asked if you could interject at a co-host. You never have to ask. Second of all, that wasn't a tangent. It was completely, you had all say excellent points. One thing, all the teams in this league have pretty good defenses. Even lowly Memphis has a pretty good defense, and Houston's defense is tenacious. Even DC, they were supposed to have a pass rush. They really didn't have any pass rush at all. And I think when they realized they had no pass rush, I think that the rest of the team forgot what else to do because that was their identity. But a bunch of these teams don't have any offense, and it wouldn't take too much for them. I mean, it's easy to say not too much when one of your problems is your quarterback isn't good, but one player can make all the difference. I mean, there was a season with the Ravens where they were 3-13 one season, then they got Steve McNair and they went 13-3 the next season. Pretty much everyone else on the team was the same. In any event, do you think that they should start Nolan Henderson, just let him play a full game and just trust him a little bit, but tell him, listen, kid, we know you can run, but try to pass a little bit more. Your feet are a little bit happy, and just give him more of these live reps.
I think so. I mean, when you're 1-8 and you're on the verge of being 1-9, you already know you're not in the playoffs. You may as well at this point. It's like when you're throwing paper towels up at the ceiling and hoping one sticks. Like you got to just see what happens, and you're throwing mud at a wall. So I think you let him. He's shown you some intriguing things. He's led some good drives over the last few weeks. It's not like he has a lack of reps. But I think you've seen what happens when you have you saw Jared Garantamo early in the year, then you saw Reed Sinnett through the middle of the year, and now at the end of the year, let's see Nolan Henderson. Nothing's worked. Let's give him a shot. This league's all about giving opportunities and helping get these players developed. So I think yes, and I think you don't have high expectations. You tell them, look, we're going to let you start, let you play. Reed's going to be your backup and ready to come in if anything happens. We want to win this game, but we're giving you every opportunity to show the NFL teams that you deserve a shot in training camp. And I think you let him take it and run and see if you can have, some sort of impact on the end of the season with a good upset win.
I agree. Now, I was going to ask you a bunch of some other players in the quarterback situation, but I think actually I'm going to ask the same question when we do our picks as to who do you start. So, Glenn or whomever, do you have next week's games or this week's games coming up for week 10, the final game of the UFL season, regular season?
I do. First up at 2:00 in Birmingham, it's the Panthers versus the Stallions.
Okay. Panthers versus the Stallions. So we have the 7-2 Panthers against the 8-1 Stallions. It is at Birmingham. And Birmingham coming after a week game. So I'm gonna start with the question, not just your pick, but who do you start at quarterback for both of these teams?
So we already know what this matchup's going to look like just 1 week later in the playoffs. We know exactly who's going to be home. We know exactly who's going to be away. And so I think if you're Birmingham, even though Adrian Martinez has been a stud and the MVP, I think you bench him. I think you don't show them your cards, and I think I hate benching starters, but I think you bench him and you give your other guys a chance and you see what happens. And for Michigan, I guess the real answer is I have no idea for Michigan because they were so reliant on their defense. They're going to be in any game, and I think Bryce Perkins showed more this past week, but I think Danny Etling is more of the sure thing. I think maybe you use Bryce Perkins and see if he can carry some momentum into the playoffs because you've seen Etling be kind of up and down, but I think that's really a coach's dilemma there. You've got the runner, you've got a guy that's a little bit more of a passer. They both showed some pros, they both showed some cons.
Who do you think wins this game?
I think Birmingham.
Okay.
Even though they're not going to show their cards, and I think that's going to play in their favor. I think they're going to show some things different, and I don't think Michigan is going to be prepared.
I think I am sitting most of my starters if I'm Birmingham, including Martinez. And yeah, I think we're going to let what's his name? Nolan, who's the backup?
Matt Corral.
With Nolan, right? I knew it was a two-syllable.
Highly accomplished player. You let him go out there and play, and he's going to keep you in the game to win, even though they don't need to win. It does no good or harm when or lose.
And I think Michigan, you do start Bryce Perkins. Let him, continue to get comfortable. Let him continue to lead that offense. And I'm going to pick Michigan to go in, and I'm not even sure it's an upset, but we'll call it upset to upset Birmingham at home. They get decent crowds there, but 9,000 to 11,000, but So that's not a home field advantage. It's good for UFL numbers, but it's not a home field advantage. So I'm going to go with Michigan going in there and pulling the upset.
And we're split on the first game already.
Okay.
Wow.
What else you got, Glenn?
All right. Well, Saturday, the second game is San Antonio Brahmas versus the St. Louis Battlehawks in St. Louis.
And before you even talk, this is ridiculous. I understand it's on ESPN. Oh, no, it's on Fox. But I understand there's things going on ESPN, UFC pay-per-view on Saturday. But this game needs to be in prime time. It's a great game, a great matchup. It has all the implications in the world. Personally, I would like this as the late night Sunday game with all the eyes on it before the week begins. But that's just me. I'll let you go.
Yeah, I mean, we still know the story with McCarron. He's day to day. I think they need him to play if he's able to play. I think they need to get some of their momentum back, but I don't know if he can play. I'm gonna make my pick based on him playing, and I know there's no backsies. It's not a conditional pick, so it's a pick. But I think that St. Louis is going to upset San Antonio. I don't know that this would have been considered an upset even 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe not even 2 weeks ago. San Antonio is really good. They're really surprising. They play in all sorts of fun, different ways. But their offense isn't that great. I mean, they rely very heavily on their defense. And if McCarron is there, it's a different offense. And I know San Antonio's defense can play with them. I just don't think that they can contain them and hold them for 4 quarters if McCarron's leading. If that offense is in any sort of rhythm, there's just too many weapons. So I'm going with St. Louis, another road team upset. I guess we'll call it an upset. And McCarron plays. And who would you have start at quarterback at San Antonio? I mean, if Garbers is your guy, I guess you got to play him, right?
I thought Dormady did an admirable job. I personally am starting Garbers here. I think he's the guy that got you started with the season. He was the guy that you thought was the most talented guy coming out of training camp. You stick with your guy. I think you know that your bread and butter is defense. And I think they showed their cards last week is that they understand that their running game is going to be vital to them. McFarland had a great game. John Lovett got a rest week, so he should be fully rested and loaded and good to go for the playoffs. And Ellison's been doing great recently. So you got a 3-headed monster in the backfield. I think you stick with the guy that your initial gut told you was the man, and you run the ball a lot, and you let Garbers do what he can through the air. I mean, he didn't have the best of games, but he had a very high quality game. He was 16 of 23, threw for 130 yards or so, and his passer rating, I believe, was like a 120 when I was looking at the box score. So he had a great game when he was in there. So let Garbers go. And I think when we talk about my prediction for this game, it's hard for me because I think the AJ McCarron effect is huge here. If he plays, the game is much more competitive than if he doesn't. I think if he doesn't play, San Antonio can very easily walk in and win and steal that number 1 seed and home field advantage. But I think that St. Louis needs the home field advantage more than any team. I believe the broadcast was saying that AJ McCarron would have played if he was needed to last week. I could be misremembering. So I think AJ McCarron does play, and I'm going to go the opposite way of you as, again, I think the Battlehawks do have that home field advantage, and despite the Brahmas looking great, I think the Battlehawks at home in a game that matters this much.
Well, he's frozen, or I am.
Yeah.
Well, he's frozen, but actually I want to point out I did pick the Battlehawks to win this game. So.
Oh, I thought you said the Brahmas.
Now you're not making. We can't hear you now.
Now we can hear. Yeah, we can hear.
I thought you said you picked the Brahmas, but I think it's going to be a great game, and I think the Brahmas will keep it close.
Yeah, no, I did pick the Battlehawks, so we're actually in agreement there. Again, McCarron is key though in both of our minds to this game. Absolutely. Okay, what do we got next?
Sunday, we're starting off at noon in DC on ABC. Arlington Renegades versus the Defenders.
Oh my goodness! You know what? I don't care, DC. You got me. I don't care. Still hate you. Arlington, the best 2-7 team you're going to see, and they're going to end the season at 3-7. Wear my Renegade shirt. They're going to go 3-0 in the only part of the season that matters, the end of the season, because they already got their championship rings. They're all winners in my heart, at least this week, because I do not like DC. Drain the swamp. Go Arlington.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting game. I mean, I like what you say because Arlington worked in a new running back this week, Darrington, and I'm forgetting his name, Devion, whatever his last name is. He came out running hard from the beginning, and the running game looked good, and Luis Perez looked good, and he looked calm, and he looked like the guy that we were expecting going into the year. And this game kind of frustrates me, because I'm not really sure what we're going to see from either team. I think Jalen McClendon looked good for DC in that fourth quarter when he played. I think Teamu looked exceptional compared to how he's been looking the rest of the year last week. And I think Chris Rowland played great. So I think this game is a battle of two teams who, yes, Devion Smith. Thank you, Jay. I think this game is very interesting, and I think it's very close. I think it's going to be a battle of who really wants it more. Both of these seasons are over. So who wants it more? And personally, I haven't seen it from DC this year. So I will agree with you. I will go with Arlington. Arlington's hot. Luis Perez is good, and he wants to show everybody that before the season's over.
Yep. All right. And last game.
Last game of the regular season in prime time, 7:00 on Fox. Houston and your favorite Memphis.
They're both my favorites. Okay.
Just like, why is this the primetime game of all games?
Yeah, I agree on that one. Yeah.
I think when they had it in mind, they were thinking about rivals because the Memphis Showboats were the Houston Gamblers / Roughnecks. So, I don't think anybody thought either of these teams were going to be that bad. In any event, this is the battle for the bottom. This is the battle for the worst. I just said that the Memphis Showboats convinced me once again that they're the worst professional football team. And I'm going to stick with this. I don't know who's playing for it. It's the Tank Bowl. It's the Stank Bowl. It's the Tank Bowl. It's the Toilet Bowl. It's whatever you want to call it. But get your dude wipes ready because this game's going to stink. There will be some defense. So if you like defense, enjoy it. But the offense is going to be ugly. But I'm going with Houston to win. I don't care where the game is. I'm going with Houston, whatever it is. Neither team can draw more than 7,000. So Houston, this week, your problem is just how you win, but not whether or not you win.
Yep, and it's in Memphis, and I agree to the same sentiment to you that I do think Houston wins. I think they're the better football team out of the two. I do think Memphis has really firmly put themselves at the bottom of the league, and this is, in fact, a tank bowl, and we will definitely find that out. But I will say that I do think the game might go a little differently than you do. I think there might be a little bit of offense. I think this game out of all four, if anything, is going to be the game with the most motivated players. These are going to be the guys that they want something good to put on film, and they've had rough seasons, and they want to end it on a good note. So I could see some good offense. I could see some exciting defense. I'm not saying it's going to be the highest scoring game of all time, but I actually do think it should be a decent game for this level of competition.
19 to 14.7.
They might be able to pull something out like that.
Have a pick one again. Well, it'll be 19 to 15. I don't know. I think whatever it is. I think I don't do gambling, but I'll just go with the under on this one. You all heard what I think of this game. So okay. So we agree that Houston somehow wins. We agree that DC somehow loses. And Arlington wins. So we're both going with Texas is going to have a good 2 out of 3 week, but we both think that San Antonio loses. I think we both picked that St. Louis wins. And I don't remember the other game at this point in time because I'm old and forgetful, but it's all recorded, so I don't need to remember. It's all there. That's all I think I have for the week. Glenn, you have anything else? Jake, you have anything else?
No, I just want to say thank you to everybody who's watching on Memorial Day weekend. Jay, thank you for complimenting us. It's always a pleasure having you. You guys do great work over there as well. We'd love to have you in on one of these, maybe a playoff edition one we could do. But it's always a pleasure to be here, and I hope everybody enjoys the rest of their holiday night. I certainly am hungry myself, so it's going to be a good dinner tonight.
All right. He loves to eat. All right. Well, I agree with those sentiments. Thank you, everyone, who spent part of your holiday weekend letting us finish up your holiday weekend with us. For those of you who didn't get a day off, I guess it's just another day, but thank you nonetheless for spending some time with us. Hopefully you're watching the UFL games.
And you get a day off soon.
Yeah, and you get a day off soon. Maybe you get tomorrow off. Who knows? Maybe tonight's your party. Maybe that's your reward. All right. I guess this is the time where we say where we can be found and followed if you want to be found and followed. So, Jake, let's start with you.
Jake_Lippman, Twitter. You can find me on Instagram, whatever. I'm not big on social media these days, but I'll be back. So Twitter is the place to find me for when I'll be back.
Next, you can find me at IcarusFellMD. There's another place too, but I'm not going to say it. You can, of course, find me on Facebook, and you can listen to my many, many, many other podcasts, including Garden of Doom and Garden Views is on that very self-same feed. Hammerlock Hangover is my wrestling podcast, which you can also find. And later on tonight, I'm supposed to be on Unpopular Review, Raw's Watch Along. They've obviously started without me, but they do that every week because they know that I'm not going to pop in until 9:45 when I can reasonably catch up to the show. By the way, on my both Jake and I sucked at our UFL predictions. We were both, I think, 1-3 this week.
Yes, and our one win was on 2 different games.
Right, but the important thing is Jake couldn't gain any ground on me. The bad thing is, listen, I actually wanted to be perfection in my imperfection with 0-4, so I'm almost upset that I lost the game. But with my wrestling predictions this week, I thought I was 17-1, but it turns out I was 16-2. I was 6-0 with King and Queen of the Ring, and I was 10-2 with AEW's Double or Nothing. And here's the thing. I haven't watched AEW in over 2 weeks, so I get to go 10-2 without even watching the product. Well, you can form your own conclusions about that. In any event.
It's good accuracy, though.
Yeah, it's good accuracy. Indeed. So that's where you can find me and follow me. It's Jake already told you. Glenn, tell us about all the magnificent products on the Sportscat network.
Well, tomorrow you can find me on the Thin Line Rock Station playing rock and roll from noon until 2. And then Wednesday, I have my Paranormal Guys show. And then Thursday, I'm back on the radio again from noon to 2. Noon? Yeah, 2. I don't even remember. Friday, I'm kind of double dipping. I've got my own show for public safety people. And I'm doing Flashback Fridays on the Thin Line Rock Station. So you got that. Saturday, we are probably going to do an open mic and invite some comedy. You two come on in and the Misfits and just kind of have a good time. That's about it for me. I'm sure there's more, but Cheyenne hasn't told me. Oh, and by the way, I want to say all the tornado victims out there, I wish you luck because I know Cheyenne is without power and has been for over 48 hours now. So,
oh no,
wow, it's terrible. All right, well, good luck to everyone. Extreme weather is just that. So everyone, I normally say stable, my friends, but I guess I'll say stay safe and check us out next week.
Definitely check back in next week. We've got a great show incoming before the playoffs.
Sure do.
Yeah, maybe you can get us a guest in here that will rock it.
And thanks to Charles for coming and speaking of guests.
Absolutely. It's always nice to have someone else in here.
That's right. All right. Well, thanks to Yerg's Radio for allowing us to be on their radio and also providing us with the phone number. So maybe you guys will get a call in one of these days. So,
anticipation is brewing.
Sometimes be careful what you wish for. And until next week, fellas, have a good one.